Good morning, and welcome to the crazy mixed up world of the court cards. Now, let me just try to adjust my image here so you can see this a little better. Why do I say it's the crazy mixed up world of the court cards? Because it is the court cards and the small cards, the lesser arcana of the tarot, is elemental. And it's the job of the elements to mix with each other in all the different ratios and proportions that make up the phenomenal universe of matter and energy. So it's the job of the elements to join with each other. And the four major elements that we're speaking of, or at least we've divided the concept of the elements into this concept of things that are fiery in nature, or watery in nature, or airy in nature, or earthy in nature. And those are the wands, cups, swords, and discs. And they have their Kabbalistic attributes in the universe with the four Kabbalistic worlds, and they have their Kabbalistic correspondences in the human soul, which is a reflection of the big universal world. And that's our bodies, our animal soul, and our ruach, our mind, and our soul intuition, which is the neshama, and just the life force itself, which is our true identity, the chai. And so that'd be reflected in the four tarot suits. So we're on the court cards now. The court cards live in their ace, and the reason I'm bringing all this Enochian stuff into it is because it is, believe it or not, an easy way to illustrate the dynamics of these elements. If you look at the ace of wands, okay, if you look at the ace of wands, you'll see that I've put the entire elemental tablet of fire. Now this is just a lettered Enochian tablet of fire, but it's lettered in English, okay? This whole thing right here, this whole thing that I don't want to move too much here, that's an elemental tablet of fire in 3 dimensions. And I'm going to use that as our illustration today because that's what we're talking about in today's reading of Tarot of Ceremonial Magick. And we are on page, if you're following along, we're on page 81, the 16 court cards. There are 4 court cards in each suit: Knight, Queen, Prince, and Princess. These are often used in tarot readings to represent actual people. But each of the court cards also is representative of a subdivision of one of the 4 elements. Now, you Myers-Briggs people know the 16 subcategories of personality types. They correspond almost perfectly, or as far as I'm concerned, perfectly with the character attributes of the 16 court cards. But I digress. The knights represent the fire aspect of their suits. The queens represent the water aspect of their suits. The princes rule the air aspect of their suits. And the princesses represent the earth aspect of their suits. Now, the Enochian tablet that I've got up on the screen right now is focused in on the air subangle, or the prince subangle of the fire tablets. So this section that we're looking at right here is the Prince of Wands. Okay. As a matter of fact, on the Tarot Ceremonial Magick, That subangle itself is printed in its entirety in color and in English right on the Prince of Wands cards itself. As I mentioned in an earlier chapter, the 16 court cards have a direct parallel in the Enochian system. Okay. I've read that. They're represented and are represented by the 16 subangles, 4 per tablet of the 4 elemental tablets. And in the book, I've also got a little illustration of that in black and white. Gotta move my mouse. The positions of the 4 subangles are the same in all 4 elemental tablets. The subangle of air is in the upper left. The water in the upper right. Over here. The earth in the lower left and fire in the lower right. Each of the 16 court cards of the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic displays the appropriate subangle at the bottom center of the card. The elemental sections of each of the squares are colored according to the following scale. Air, yellow, water, blue, earth, green, and fire, red. Each subangle contains 30 lettered squares, which spell out the names of a small hierarchy of angels. When invoking the angels of a subangle or a court card, this hierarchy must be recognized and included in the words of the conjuration, if you're into actually doing that. The appropriate temple openings, Enochian calls, and the conjurations are provided in their entirety in Appendix 3 of this book. I've reproduced the air subangle of the tablet of, the air subangle of the fire tablet, or the Prince of Wands, to illustrate how the names of the various angels of the subangles are determined. If you refer often to this diagram while reading what follows, you should have no trouble in understanding this angelic hierarchy. And I've got it in black and white here, but I've got it in beautiful living color right here in front of us too. Okay. Each subangle is ruled by 2 divine names found on the Calvary cross, which divides it into sections. So do you see this white vertical line that's white on the top and bottom for spirit, and this one horizontal line, let's all do it this way, it's also white from top and bottom. And look, they're numbered 1 through 10. These are the Sephiroth of a mini tree of life inside each one of these subangles. The first divine name is a 6-letter name found on the center vertical column, read from top to bottom. In this case, in the case of the subangle air of fire, Noelmer. The second name is used to compel the angel Noelmer to obedience. This is the 5-letter name of the horizontal arm of the Calvary cross, Olaga. Next in hierarchical order is the cherubic angel of the subangle. This is the 4-letter name of the angel is found above the arms of the cross. In this case, it's Dopa. So here's the cross, right there. And the next, those are the divine names. Noelmar. Okay. And in the name of Noelmar, you invoke the divine name Oloaga. Oloag. Okay? Now, that activates the tablet. It's like turning the switch in an electrical thing. Now the next angel is the cherub, and its four-letter names is found above the arms of the cross. And in this case, it's Dopa, D-O-P-A. The cherubic angel rules the four lesser angels found below the arms of the cross. These four guys. Him, him, him or her. Him or her, him or her, him or her. Opmun, Apst, Skyo, and Vasg. So, these four guys are ruled by this guy who gets himself turned on by these guys. That's technical magic guy talk. I now call the reader's attention to the individual squares of the subangle. Like all Enochian squares, they're divided into four sections. There's a simple, almost, explanation of why the various squares are allotted elements, which I will briefly review before we move on. The 10 squares of the Calvary cross, they're even numbered there, and they're white so you can spot them. The top section of each of the squares of the Calvary cross of every subangle is attributed to spirit, and so it's white. The bottom section to a sephira of the tree of life. The left section is always attributed to the element of the full tablet, in our example, fire. So you can see that the left section is attributed to fire. Okay. And the right section is attributed to the element represented by the subangle, in our example, air. So now I'm going to twist it here so you can see the right section here is yellow. Okay, let's see if I can get my light to look at it a little differently there. There we go. It's yellow. Take my word for it. Okay. We've got some maybe I can turn this light on. That's a little better. You can see the yellowness of it there. The four squares of the cherubic angel, that's this guy up here at the top. The top section of each of the four cherubic squares is attributed to the element of the full tablet. In this case, fire, and the tops are red. Red at the top, red at the top, red at the top, red at the top. And the bottom section is attributed to the element represented by the subangle, in this case, air and yellow. Yellow, 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 yellow. You'll notice that the left and right sections of the cherubic square both represent the same element. In our case, air of fire. So example is the right and left section of the D square are both air. The right and left section of the O square are both earth. The right section and the left section of the P square are both fire. And the right and the left section of the A square are both water. So we see air, air, earth, earth, fire, fire, water, water. The order of the elements may change. The order of the elements may change from subangle to subangle in conformity with a logical permutation. But what doesn't change is the fact that the order in which the elements appear in the squares of the cherubic angels' names determines the elemental characteristics of the 4 columns and 4 rows found in the squares below the arms of the cross. These 16 squares contain the 4-letter names of the lesser angels. So the pattern of how these 16 servient angels are allotted their elements, the pattern that's set, and in this case air, earth, fire, water, is also the pattern that's set here, air, earth, fire, water, for the rows and for the columns. Let's see here. Let's see, air, earth, fire, water. Okay. Hang on. The 4 lesser angels. Observe in figure 10 that the left section of each of the 16 squares forming the names of the 4 lesser angels is always attributed to the element of the full tablet, and the right section is always attributed to the element represented by the subangle. The elements of the top and bottom squares are determined by a pattern set of the elements as they appear in the name of the cherubic angel. For our example, the order is from left to right: air, earth, fire, water, just like Lon said. Now, view the 16 squares of the lesser angles as 4 vertical columns. Each of these columns is ruled by the cherubic squares, which are directly above it, and in the arms above it, in the arms of the cross. The D square is of the air. The D square is the air square. Consequently, all top sections of Oasva are attributed to air, Papaka to earth, Misis to fire, and Nutog to water. Now view the 16 squares of the lesser angle as 4 horizontal rows. The bottom section of each square is similarly governed by the order of the cherubic squares. Starting with the bottom name Vasag, the bottom sections are attributed to air, Skio to earth, Asp to fire, Opum, and open to water. Now, that was a very wordy little section there, but it was very easy for me to just show you using these truncated pyramids. It was easy for me to show you how the order of the rows and the columns are ruled by the order of how the pattern was set by the order of the cherubic names. In other words, it is so much easier just to color your own tablets and instantly figure out the method to the madness and the ease and the logic behind it than it is to attempt to wrap your brain around it by reading a description of it. So that's why I encourage everybody who's into tarot and Enochian magic, just build your own equipment, even if it's on a piece of paper. That's the way you understand it. And then you look at it and go, oh my God, it's so simple. And it's so hard to explain, but so simple just to see. Okay. The angelic calls necessary to activate the various tablets and call forth the Enochian spirits can be found in Appendix 3 of this book, along with the appropriate ceremonial temple openings. The above description may seem hopelessly confusing, especially to the novice, but I assure you it's much easier than it sounds. A good way to see how simple it is to color the tablets found in Appendix 3 of this book. By doing so, you'll readily see the logic of the system and be rewarded with a beautiful set of tablets. And it ends up looking like sort of like that. That's the Earth tablet. As a matter of fact, I just took the black and white image of the figure that's included in the appendix of this book, put it on a piece of paper, took some colored pens, and did it sub-angle by sub-angle. And it just, the whole thing, not only did I organize my own subconscious mind with this thing, but I easily showed myself the divine, elegant, awesome method to the madness of how that's colored. Within the structure of Enochian magic, additional angel names can be determined by changing the order of the 4 letters making up the cherubic angel. These additional cherubs in turn rule the 4 lesser angels below the arms of the cross, whose names are formed by rearranging the letters in the same order as those of the rearranged cherub. Also, by prefixing the names of the cherubs and lesser angels with appropriate letters from the Tablet of Union, the names of additional ruling angels can be determined. These angels could be thought of as archangelic in nature and positioned in conjurations after the divine names of the Calvary Cross in the Enochian hierarchy. The rules governing these and other variations are complex, and considerable disagreement exists even among the most knowledgeable experts on the matter concerning exactly which letters from the Tablet of Union are appropriate prefixes. So in other words, I'm going to say if you want to start improvising in that area, you're on the cutting edge of the technology and experimentation, and you're on your own. Conversely, each subangle contains triliteral names of 4 malevolent spirits, or kakodaimonos, who by tradition manifest the averse characteristics of their angelic neighbors. See what I mean? In other words, the 16 lesser angel of the 4 subangles of air, the 4 princes, the court cards of the tarot, are skilled and effective in medicine and cure of sickness. But the kakodaimonos of those same subangles bring sickness and disease. Their names are formed by joining the 2 letters on the left side of the vertical column of the Calvary Cross with a specific letter from the Tablet of Union. Unlike other aspects of Enochian magic, information concerning the appropriate uses for these spirits and details outlining safe techniques whereby they can be conjured and controlled are conspicuously absent or buried very deeply in the traditional Enochian literature. For sake of completeness, I have listed their names with the other relative information about the court cards, but I do not suggest a program of magical experimentation with the kakodaimonos without a great deal of preliminary research and a mature and profound understanding of the possible consequences. If you're truly interested in mastering the many aspects of Enochian magic, I encourage you to avail yourself of the many fine texts on the subject which are currently available. And at the time that I wrote this, way back in 1990s or 89, whenever it was I was writing, I was especially appreciative of Bob Turner's Elizabethan Magic. Okay, now what time is it? Okay, I'm going to continue on. Enough of that. I'm going to do this and get my there. Constance just hates what I do to my desk every morning. It's crazy. The astrological attributes of the court cards. notice that there's 30 degrees, or approximately 30 days of the year associated with each of three of the court cards: the kings, the queens, or the knights, the queens, and the princes. Princesses are screwed. Okay, but they don't rule a sign of the zodiac. They rule 20 degrees of one sign to 20 degrees of the following sign. The queens rule the cardinal signs of the zodiac. The princes rule the fixed signs of the zodiac, and the knights rule the mutable signs of the zodiac. Why that? Because it's the job of the elements to mix. So the queens get to be the cardinal signs, as they should. The four knights, queens, and princes each rule 30 degrees of the zodiac, from 20 degrees of one sign to 20 degrees of the next. Footnote: the four princesses do not rule degrees of the zodiac. As mentioned earlier, they rule with the aces, the four quadrants of heaven, about the north pole of the earth. And the four quadrants of the earth demarcated by, as if you're flying over a helicopter over the North Pole and drew a line straight from the North Pole down through the Great Pyramid in Giza, and then chopped up the four sections of the earth in Yod-He, Vav-He order: fire, water, air, earth, moving from, that would make Asia Yod, fire, the Pacific water, cups, the Americas, Vav, Tav, and Europe and Africa, the Hay final, and discs. There are good reasons for this zodiacal mix of 20 degrees of one sign to 20 degrees of the next. In the character of the court cards, first of all, the 12 signs of the zodiac are already represented in the tarot by the 12 trumps: Emperor, Hierophant, Lovers, Chariot, Lust, Hermit, Justice, Death, Art, Devil, Star, and Moon. Secondly, it's the nature of the elements to combine with other elements. The elemental creation is by nature a churning process. By including 10 degrees of the previous sign in their composition, the knights, queens, and princes more accurately reflect the elemental facts of nature. In keeping with this concept of churning, it is the queen of each suit, not the knight, which represents the cardinal aspect of the element's nature. This is why we find the queens to be the predominant rulers of the cardinal signs of the zodiac. This information and the approximate days of the years covered by these 30-degree periods is displayed in the upper right section of each of these 12 court cards. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my place here. This information and the appropriate days of the year covered by these 36-degree periods is displayed in the upper right section of each of the court cards of the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. Using this information, the significator in a tarot reading can be determined by the questioner's birthday. The other individuals or other individuals relevant to the reading can be similarly identified. Now, let's talk about that. A Yi Ching hexagram. The Yi Ching, the Chinese Book of Changes, has been called the Kabbalah of the East. The Tarot of Ceremonial Magic does not presume to act as a replacement to this venerable work and divinatory tool, but there are certain areas where the Kabbalah and the I Ching clearly coincide. There are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. A hexagram is a figure made up of 6 lines, either broken or unbroken. Each hexagram is made up of 2 trigrams, figures made up of 3 lines, either broken or unbroken. There are 8 such trigrams representing male, female, sun, moon, fire, water, air, and earth. Of these, the 4 elemental trigrams are perfectly parallel to the 4 elements of the tarot. Fire, water, air, earth. When combined to form hexagrams, fire of fire, water of fire, earth of fire, etc., the resulting 16 figures perfectly match the elemental characteristics of the 16 court cards. These hexagrams can be found in the upper left of each of the court cards, and their titles and a brief divinatory meaning can be found in the text and illustration of each of the court cards in this book, which will start tomorrow. These hexagrams, as it is sometimes difficult to interpret the meaning of court cards in a tarot reading, yeah, tell me about it. I hate court cards when they show up in a tarot reading unless I can recognize them. Gee, does this have anything to do with a man with a black horse? As it's sometimes difficult to interpret the meanings of the court cards in a tarot reading, it can be very helpful to consult the corresponding I Ching hexagram for greater insight. For more in-depth understanding of the I Ching, I encourage you to obtain one of the many fine translations of the text currently available and refer to it often in conjunction with your use of the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. Wow, our plate was pretty full today, and that's where we're going to stop. Constance is going to be so mad at me for going 32 minutes. But anyway, I hope you found it helpful. And tomorrow we'll start talking about the individual court cards of the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. Have a good week, everybody. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. Happy President's Day.